Hello and welcome to Conversations on Conversations, where we explore topics to help us have more powerful conversations with ourselves and others. I'm your host, Sarah Noll Wilson, and joining me this week is somebody I've had the privilege of working with, Elsa Isaac. And together we will be exploring this idea of how the clothes we wear can really shape how we feel about ourselves and shape how other people feel about us as well. So let me tell you a little bit about Elsa. Elsa Isaac is a personal wardrobe stylist for ambitious women professionals who believe style is really all about self-expression. She is a seasoned pro with 20 plus years in the fashion industry. The East African-born stylist has built quite a noteworthy portfolio, working her style magic on everyone from Rodgers and Lenny Kravitz to Couric and Marion. Nowadays, she helps successful career women and entrepreneurs revamp their wardrobes and create show-stopping ensembles that flatter their unique body shapes and lifestyles. Elsa resides in New York City with her husband and son and is the host of the Get Styled podcast. Welcome to the show, Elsa.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited that this worked out. Okay, what else do you want people to know about you?
I mean, sometimes you want people to know a little less, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm out there. I've been out online. It was so funny. I think we were on vacation in Paris this summer. My son was like, "Google me, Mom." And I was like, "Okay." And of course he didn't come up. And then he Googled my husband. He said, "Google Daddy." And then he's like, "Google you." And of course there's all this stuff that comes up on me. I was like, yeah, sometimes you forget that everything you put out is out there. So you did a great job. Thank you for introing me.
Yeah. So I love that. You know, what a thing that didn't exist when we were kids to say, honestly, what's the online story about us?
Yes.
So for people listening, I was trying to think of how I came across your work all those years ago. I know it was online. I think that I think somebody that I followed and admired, possibly Marie Forleo, somebody shared working with you, and I got really interested, and that's how I, came to connect with you. But somehow your name came across my feed by somebody who you had worked with that I had a ton of respect for.
I generally have a really crappy memory, but I remember it was on Twitter that you reached out.
Yeah, sure.
So I wonder if I could probably go back and figure out who that middle person was. But yes, it was on Twitter. And I remember thinking I don't get a lot of inquiries or, I'm not on there often. And so I was like, oh, this, she sounds so amazing. And, you never know. Cause I think a lot of women will hear about stylists and styling and not really consider it as something that is available for them or a possibility. But you did. Yeah. So that was dope.
No, I loved it. And it's changed. I mean, we'll get into my experience working with you, but take us back. What's your journey in the fashion industry and just this journey to come to the work that you're doing to help people think differently about how they show up and how they feel about how they show up?
Yeah, I think it took a while. I was into, I guess you can say, the fashion industry. I knew what I wanted to do fairly young. I always had a fascination with clothes, playing with Barbies and dolls. I was more interested in the clothes they were wearing and the outfits I could, kind of create. And so, in high school, I remember maybe before that, I taught myself how to draw, sketch. And then I actually ended up taking sketching lessons because I wanted to get better. And then I dabbled with sewing. And then in high school, we took, there was a fashion program. So I got better at sewing. And then I'm Canadian. So I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, and I wanted to go to, at the time, it was one of 2 degree programs for fashion in Canada. And it was in Toronto. And so I ended up going there, and I thought I was just going to be a designer. That's, when you think about, I'm 45 now. So, many years ago, a stylist wasn't something that I even knew existed. I had no idea what the possibilities were within that within the realm of clothing. And so I was in my second year of university, and a friend of mine who was in the music industry was like, hey, we're doing a music video for this artist. Can you style it? And I was like, it's so sweet of you to think of me. I don't do that. I'm a student, but thank you. And he just wouldn't take no for an answer. And so he was like, we'll walk you through it. It'll be great. And so I felt like I had no choice, and it just ended up being one of those things that, you discover that you're naturally good at. I styled not just the artist. There was like 12 people on that set that day. And I remember it being a long 14-hour day and everybody complimenting the looks after I styled a person. And I was like, it's totally telling them to tell me that I did a good job, right? And then he handed me a check at the end of that day and was like, I knew you could do it. And so that was like how I got into styling. But because I entered through like the commercial lens, right? Very, artists and then magazines and models, it was a very different purview. It was a different end goal. Yeah. And I think when I ended up moving to New York and, started assisting stylists here and started doing my own gigs, something just felt off after a few years. And I was like, what does this mean? I don't like styling anymore. I couldn't figure out what the misalignment was. And then we did this shoot for, I think it was Good Housekeeping magazine with 4 women, I think it was, from across the country who had just undergone drastic weight loss, and they were being featured on the cover. And I remember them walking into the studio feeling so nervous, right? They're this is New York City, big city, big magazine, cover shoot, like all the things that should make you nervous. But seeing their transformation after every, kind of layer, right? Like hair and makeup, and then wardrobe, and then being on set with a glass of champagne, and just seeing how they stepped into themselves and felt like they could, shine and be bold and I think like the limitations started to just melt away. And I remember thinking, that's powerful, just seeing them, that transformation in those few hours. And I think that planted a seed. And a few years later, I kind of fell into the coach. I fell into a coach. I think it was Marie first, Marie Forleo. And that changed everything. I started working with women professionals and entrepreneurs. And that was like the sweet spot. I was like, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
I'm so glad that you're doing what you're meant to be doing, because I certainly have benefited from it. What are some of those common limitations you see, particularly as women? So, I mean, knowing that you work with women and knowing that, while we have a global audience, I'll speak from a Western perspective, because I don't know necessarily how this translates into other regions, but there's such a high expectation of youthfulness, of beauty, of cuteness, of maybe sexiness, or, my friend and I, we were just talking recently about how she said, in high school, it felt like you could be cute, beautiful, or sexy, but you couldn't be all of those. But as women in particular, we're given so many messages about what it means to look like a woman, what it means to show up as a woman. And it's not always healthy. So what are some of those maybe rules we've been told, or you see those limitations or rules that women hold when you're working with them?
Yeah. And I think, everything that you said and in my conversations with women, so much of it is external, right? Like these expectations. That's one of the reasons I don't really connect with the fashion industry per se. I'm not a fan of, this industry dictating, right, what trends I should be wearing or how I should look. And so it's a balance for me, because I also have to look at what's out there, right, and be up to date, so to speak, on inventory. But I think that's why this being able to help women in this way, and my philosophy is switching that. So instead of looking to external sources of inspiration, let's start with you. Because then you block out all the noise and you're focused on, hey, what's my body shape? How do I want to feel in my clothes? And what feels authentic to me? Because when, we're all visual creatures. They say that it takes 7 seconds for us to make an assumption about someone we just met. And so taking back that narrative and deciding, well, what do you want to say about who you are in those 7 seconds, right? And so it becomes less superficial and more about, like, why are we completely ignoring this outside version of ourselves? Because we often talk about the inner work and self-development and all that takes, but then we chalk this up to superficial, who cares? Like, I should be able to show up anyway. Yeah, but do you feel good in that? Do you feel good showing up in the way that you are showing up? And so once you start to shift how you're using clothes, what you're using clothing for, then it becomes less about everyone else's expectations and more about how you want to feel and what message you want to send the world about who you are.
Yeah. There's something so powerful, and I can only imagine the stories you have of being able to work with people who know somewhere deep down inside what their truth is, of how they want to show up, of how they want to present themselves, of how they want to have people experience them, that maybe they were afraid, maybe it felt risky, maybe it was risky, right? Depending on your situation. I remember early in my career, somebody telling me, nobody will take you serious on stage unless you're wearing a suit.
Really? Someone said that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if it's the rebel in me, but my response internally was, oh, we'll see about that.
Yeah,
but some part of me, especially in my early years, and people know who listen, I come from the Midwest, and in the Midwest in the United States, it's such a high value of fitting in here, right? It's such a homogenous, so that standing out, wearing something bold, can feel threatening to the norm almost, So I'm just curious what comes up for you as I share that.
Yeah, no, that is such a good point. And I remember I was a colleague and friend had mentioned this to me, that as humans, we need to feel like we belong to our tribe, right? Whoever that tribe may be or wherever that tribe may exist. And the moment, and like, that's a survival instinct. And so I do understand that. And I also know that the, assimilation aspect of fitting in can also be detrimental on the other side of that, right? Because that's more of a form of control. Like when I hear so many women who come from corporate and some of the, I think they're slowly working themselves out, hopefully, the outdated, kind of ideas of how women and men should dress is crazy to me. Like, we're in 2024 and, I still hear about like, oh, I don't know if I could do that color. Not even like, we're not even talking about exposing skin. We're talking about, I think this color is too much for my office. And I remember thinking, really? And I really do think that the parameters are, there are more rules for women than men in the corporate, also we have way more garment types, to kind of maneuver. But I just think that's part of the evolution, I think, that we're in right now in terms of like expressing who we are, our individuality, especially as entrepreneurs. We have that freedom, which I think we can take it to really incredible places when I work with entrepreneurs specifically.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was just speaking at an event that I had spoken at last year, and I had worn an outfit last year that you helped me pull together, which was a bright colored sweater and, bright colored pants. And then I wore something similar, like not the same, but I realized there's a certain style of pant that I really like. And I really like a bold print or a bold shirt or a fun, like the one I'm wearing now is, for people who are listening, is one of my favorite sweaters that has geese and squirrels on it. Don't ask me why those go together, but they do. And it's one of my favorite sweaters. And this woman, she said, "You're wearing the same thing you did last year." And I said, "Oh no, I'm not," because I know the photos. But I said, "Why? what do you see or what do you observe? She said, well, I was just curious because I was like, is this some kind of power outfit that I should be thinking about? And I loved that. And I said, well, this is my power outfit. These kind of pants, this kind of top makes me feel my most true self, which also then leads to me showing up as my most powerful self. And I was so excited that we were going to be talking because this just happened 2 weeks ago that she was like, is this a power outfit that I should be thinking about? I'm like, I don't know what that is for you, but for me, this is what it is.
But I love that you said that, because there is a distinction. And I think that we're overwhelmed, right? We are inundated with information and life and work and all the things. So I get the overwhelm, right? Like that's probably the main reason I feel the majority of my clients are coming to me is because of the overwhelm, not knowing where to start. There's literally billions of options for women alone, right? In terms of clothing, garments, trends, whatever. And so I get that. And also there's always a way to make it yours. Always. Right? No matter what the trends say, no matter what the stores say, there's enough options, especially online. I would say online is probably the most efficient way to shop right now. Even in New York City where, we have flagship stores and, they're not making clothes fast enough. I think that supply chain issue has lingered and is continuing to linger. And so there's always a way to make it your own, utilizing the power of tailoring also to ensure that clothing fits you perfectly, and not relying on these designers to know your body when they've never met you and feel defeated when you try something on and it not fit. And when you talked about being empowered, that's what this is all about. Empowering yourself, because whether you are intentional about it or not, your clothes have an energetic effect on you. And then therefore, and also then the people you meet by extension. So what's more empowering than taking that back? Taking that power back and being intentional about it.
And I love that. Well, two things that you said that are staying in my brain a bit. One, that idea of assimilation as a form of control. Isn't that interesting to start thinking about that, of whether that's in the office, the workforce, or even, quite frankly, in a cultural thing? It's, I was joking with my younger nieces and I said, all these styles that you're looking at going, oh, I'm like, in 10 years are going to come back. It's very cyclical. I said, so at the end of the day, just wear what you want to wear what feels good for you. There's no, oh, you shouldn't wear this color after this day, or you as an adult, over 40, you should, I don't like, just wear what you feel really good in. And then that point of no matter what is out there, you can make it yours. What would you say to people who are listening to this, who maybe struggle stepping into, this is what I really love to wear, or who might actually struggle with not knowing? Because this was something that I know was an evolution for me. When I was younger, I loved vintage clothes. I loved being so much more expressive. I went to a private school growing up, and the plaids and the blues and the whites were just too limiting for me, that I was just, how do I find color? But when I became a 20-year-old and was in the workforce, all the rules, right, that were put on me is wear black, wear suits, right, quote unquote professional, that it took me a long time to reconnect with, well, what do I actually really love? And what do I feel good in? So I know there are people who are listening to this, or maybe their body has changed. Maybe they've had kids. Maybe they're going through some hormonal changes. Maybe, for a whole host of reasons, something has shifted and evolved, and they might be feeling stuck, and just like not sure. What would you invite them to start thinking about if they're new on their journey of styling themselves in a new way?
Yeah, I think, it's been a few years since we worked together, but I have all my clients go through a questionnaire and Pinterest board exercise. And you can just take away 3 things from that to do on your own, which I think is super helpful. The first step is to know your body shape. You gotta know. You can no longer, burying your head in the sand about it isn't going to help. And in fact, just being familiar with your body. And the nuances I promise you, it will make shopping easier, right? And so a lot of women they guess, we're all guessing what our body shapes are. So I created a body shape calculator on my website. And so when you enter the 4 body measurements in inches, and it has to be the full width around each of those body parts, you'll get a body type and then also a guide with the corresponding tips on what to look for when you're shopping. And that is not about trends at all. It's just about certain cuts, flatter, different shapes. And so understanding that off the bat allows you to, I'm at a point now where I can walk into a store and not even let's say a pattern attracts me to a garment, and then I'll get closer to it and see the shape and realize, nope, those won't work for my hips, and move on. Right. So it just creates simplicity in terms of what is worth your time to take into the fitting room, or online. If you're shopping online, put it in your cart to get it to you at home to try on. And so knowing your body shape. And then the second thing is coming up with 3 words that describe how you want your clothes to make you feel. Right? So this is further guidance. This becomes your body shape is filter question number 1, your 3 words. And it doesn't mean that every garment should make you feel all 3, but it should make you feel at least 2 of the 3 words. And then the last thing, and this is, I think, a game changer for a lot of clients, is sometimes we can't articulate what style aesthetic we like or are drawn to. And sometimes we don't fit in a box. Yeah. And so, and like you said, sometimes, life has happened. We are now older, we have kids, our lifestyle has changed. And so getting to know what you are drawn to now in this version of who you are is important. So getting on Pinterest, you can create a board called, I think I asked you to style inspiration board. It was an inspiration board. What did you like? And then just taking a few minutes each day, right? And I ask my clients to take at least a week, but this can be longer. A few minutes each day, not too long. And you're pinning images of garments or outfits that you are moved by, like like that make you gasp, like, and doing that for a few minutes, coming back to it the next day, eliminating what no longer resonates, adding a few more. By the end of your 7 days or 2 weeks or however long you continue this process, you should be completely lit up and inspired by this visual board, which basically lets you know where your starting point is, right? It doesn't mean these aren't parameters to confine you to just this, but what you will see is patterns start to develop, right? It may be, oftentimes I can tell if a client is into patterns or not by their Pinterest board. You were very much into color and print, which I loved. And, it may be that you're into dresses more so than separates, or vice versa. So picking up on all those patterns that develop in your Pinterest board, and then using that as a guide to, whether you're shopping or whether you're contemplating a garment you already own in your closet, and asking yourself, does this suit my body shape? 1, does this make me feel at least 2 of my 3 describing words? 2, 3, is this in the direction of my style Pinterest board? Right. And then you have tangible questions to ask. It's not just do I like this? Should I keep this? And so those are really grounding. That's a really grounding place to start. And starting in your closet, honestly, is it's huge insight and gives you so much data. And also you can tailor, right, pieces in your wardrobe if it's just a fit issue. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And they become like new garments. So.
Yeah. Well, and what I appreciate about that is because I'm, not everyone may have the resources to work with somebody like you. One of the things that I will say that I appreciated about working with you is introducing me to stores I wouldn't have been introduced to, being really thoughtful about what is the investment I want to make? What are those price points? So for people who are listening who might be like, oh, I don't know, it's worth having a conversation, and taking some time to go through the process you just identified, getting really clear about your body shape, getting really clear about how do you want your clothes to make you feel, and then starting to try it out and figure things out, and doing the inspiration board on Pinterest, or just what do I like? What am I drawn to? Because even for me, I remember when we were working together, I'm pretty sure you're like, and even if it's furniture,
Yeah.
if there's some visual that's like, oh, I love this burnt orange couch. Like there's something about it that felt yummy to me. There's something about it that, no surprise, tugged at my fall girl, heartstrings.
Yeah.
But what I appreciate about you sharing that is, one, you can look at your own closet. Two, right? There's other affordable ways to be able to, whether that's looking at thrift stores, which I love that thrift stores are such a resurgence now.
Yeah.
I feel like in a way that they hadn't been. It's also so much more, I don't even want to say acceptable, but it's like a prize. Like, oh, I got this and I got it for $5 or whatever the case might be. But the other thing that I've been doing with a friend is we swap clothes. Like there's clothes that's just not for me.
Yeah.
And maybe it was for me at one point. Or maybe I got it wanting to try it and realizing I'm not a dress girl. That's just so clear. As much as I love I love how dresses look on other people, it's just not, I don't feel my best. She's a super dress girl. So then it's like, hey, what's our swaps and how do we, maybe share our closet with each other? And so that's been really fun.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. Someone else, an assistant that used to help me out, she ended up having like a clothing swap party they were like in their 20s and had really cool pieces,
Sure.
But I was like, that's so dope that it's like a thing, that can be made into an event and it's, obviously eco-friendly and environmentally friendly, all the things. But I also wanted to mention, one of the things that we don't do often enough, and what is, because of when you hire a stylist, the structure is already there and you've paid this person, so now you have to invest the time, is taking time out to play in your closet. We're often trying to get dressed and create outfits in this time crunch, which is very stressful and doesn't really work well when you're trying to be creative and fun. So you need to create that bandwidth. And so if it's a matter of 2 days a month where you have maybe a 1 hour or 2 hour window where you can just have a playlist, snacks, your favorite drink, and then make sure you have a full length mirror and just play, like just put combinations together that you wouldn't think would work, because I do that. And half my clients think I'm crazy when I ask them to put certain looks together, and they don't.
I recall those moments,
and they don't always work, but the majority of them do. And like sometimes you just need to see, and that's part of the. Sometimes it's hard to explain why certain things go together, because you can't. You just sometimes nothing about these two pieces should work, but when you put them together, they do. And then there are sometimes, and of course, oftentimes there are rules that make sense, for color combinations to work and pattern combinations to work. But the whole point of this, what I'm saying right now, is to play. The more you play, the more you'll be able to express that authentic side of you that I don't think we get to. It's like so far back on the priority because, life and logistics and, utilitarian use, clothes, right?
Yeah.
But the more you can infuse play, it's just really a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things that was a challenge for me, just from the standpoint of I could look at clothes on a rack or in my closet and just not know. And now I feel much more freedom to go, I don't know, let's see what this looks like together.
Oh, that's awesome.
The other thing for me, especially, and again, I'm generalizing, but one of the things I've noticed is that people who are quick to make assumptions or judge other people for what they're wearing often struggle just as much judging themselves and critiquing themselves. And so even that is such a simple reframe of maybe somebody's wearing something that you wouldn't wear, but man, if they feel good in it, we should celebrate that shit. Like, if they feel good and they, it's, and then what is that for you? And, it is such a game changer for how you feel about yourself. It's a game changer for how you present yourself. It does send a message. And I think that one of the things you do have to be not aware of in the sense of adjusting, but that's the choice you make of, we're constantly sending out signals of this is who we are. And especially as either leaders or entrepreneurs, we're sending out messages of this is who we are. This is how we show up in the work. And this is probably who we're going to be a good alignment or fit for. Mm-hmm. And I think the more explicit and more nuanced we can be with those signals, the easier it is for people to identify, yep, there's somebody I want to work with, or maybe they're not. And just recognizing that close is a part of that signaling, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, you know, we do the same thing with resumes, right? Like we're putting our best foot forward, and not for the sake just of getting a job in this case, but it's really about accepting this outer version of yourself and taking ownership of it in a way that makes you feel powerful, confident, all the things. And it just makes communicating easier. It's a form of communication. And so I just, you know, if this is something that has been nudging you, right? I think that there's a reason why. And women come to me often when there's a transition happening in their life, whether it's like a new job or a new position, or just finished having babies and getting back to feeling like themselves. And so there's always this nudge. Life is like, okay, well, now what? You know, who are you now? And that's our own signal to ourselves to be like, okay, this is who I am. I feel like the outside version of me is a good representation of who I am on the inside. And I think when that's misaligned, then we feel off.
Yeah. I had a client once, a colleague, who said, authenticity is, does my inside match my outside? And there's something really beautiful about that.
I say this all the time. I don't even think that's a great definition for authenticity. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly what you said. And that's, I mean, and to be really true to you, again, it can be a very powerful place to step into. What, if you could invite the audience to reflect on either like a question or a reframe, what would you want people to be thinking about differently when it comes to their relationship with their clothes, or how they show up, or how they feel about their bodies?
I think it's acceptance of your body. You know, I hear the whole I'm not at the size that I want to be at yet, and of course I can appreciate that. I've been there. I thought those same things, but you know, I think if we can be where we are now, in the body we're in now, and show up in the most, I want to say brightest, but maybe that's not your word, right? But maybe just the most authentic, that's the word that keeps coming up, version of yourself, then it doesn't have to be hard, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to look like anyone else. And maybe you haven't seen a template of what that could be for you, which is hard, which is where like working with a stylist is magical because of that alone, right? But I also think that there's room for you to play on your own and just figure out what that might be, because that experience too will change you. And so I think like just playing in this way with your clothes and how you want your clothes to be reflective of who you are in a non-pressure way, right? Like just you and your closet and your 3 words and your Pinterest board, right? All these things. Do that for a month and see how that shifts, because I think it's incremental. You know, a lot of people talk about capsule wardrobes, and I always say a capsule wardrobe is not possible without a lot of data, right? So it takes at least 6 months to a year before you can even attempt to curate a capsule wardrobe. And so just start now. Start where you are. Start playing. Write stuff down. Create a list of like gaps you have been wanting to fill and are realizing you need to fill in your wardrobe. And then approach it as like this puzzle piece that you just, you know, you do a few pieces a day or a few pieces a month. And that way you can shop for one thing a month. If that thing is available, there's no pressure, right? Yeah. And I think if you just shifting the perspective on what this means, and it's sure, it's utilitarian. We do need to get dressed every day, but also what you put into it is what people can feel and what you can feel first and foremost.
Yeah.
So I think if we just approach it from a play perspective, I think that in and of itself will take you to places you never thought. You could.
I mean, you know me, I love curiosity and playfulness and experimenting. And that was something that you helped me, was trying on things I would never have in my brain. I would have said, oh, that's not going to look good on me, or I can't pull that off, or, I can't do jumpsuits, or whatever these really just absolutely ridiculous beliefs we have. But if you come from a place of, let's see, you might discover something new that you hadn't thought before. Yeah,
it's like a detachment,
Yeah. Elsa, I so appreciate you and the work that you're doing and coming on the show and giving our audience, and especially our the women in the audience, some perspective on how to think differently about their relationship with how they view themselves and how they want to show up so they can show up more powerfully in whatever way that means to them. Since this is your first time on our show, there is a question I ask every new guest. And so I'm curious to hear your answer. And the question is this: what is a conversation you've had with yourself or someone else that was transformative for you?
Honestly, I think a lot of my conversations with clients, because I think, I obviously talk to a lot of women who feel, who feel lack for whatever reason. And I think hearing their experiences, and I wish we all could hear each other's experiences, because we're so much more similar than we think we are. And I think those are always inspiring for me, because the perseverance of human spirit and what we go through and where we end up is pretty incredible. So I don't know if that's cheating, but I would say that. And also, like, my kid, he's like, he like, they're super feelers, these little humans. And sometimes they'll just say something that I'm like, what? Where did you get that?
There's a level of honesty that still exists that hasn't, been, the shell hasn't been put up yet. Yes. No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And Elsa, okay, so for people who are listening, who are interested maybe in learning more about the work you do, getting some of the tools, what are the best ways for people to connect with you?
Well, my website, and there's a lot of info there. And if you just put, I know I mentioned my body shape calculator, you just put in my name.com and body shape calculator, it'll come up. But a lot of resources and information there. And also I hang out on Instagram, Elsa Isaac there as well, LinkedIn. And we just started, I keep saying it's been, it's been several months.
I was going to say it's been a few months now.
Yeah,
and by the time people hear this, it'll have been about, even more time.
It's new. We're going to call it new until it reaches 12 months old. And then I'll be like, my old podcast. But it's called Get Styled, and it's been really incredible to have these conversations. I think this is the type of conversation that's missing from the styling space. Oftentimes we're talking about the clothes, and I always say it's really not about the clothes. And so we talk about the mindset. I have conversations with clients and other women or people who are in the industry, and just, to talk about the mindset. What separates us from thinking that we don't deserve to feel good in our skin, in our clothes. And so that's been really nourishing, it just feels like a good fit. So those are probably the top 4 places I'll be at, and you'll get lots of resources and information.
No, and we'll put that in the show notes so people can connect. And if you ever see me and I'm wearing some bright colored pant or shirt, know that seed was planted by Elsa.
I took full responsibility.
And helping me reclaim my brightness. I've never thought of that word for myself. Yeah.
So you're totally bright.
No, it totally is.
Yeah.
And so when you said that, I thought, oh, that's a gift. But so thank you so much for the work you do and how you show up and how you help us show up for ourselves as well. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Our guest this week has been Elsa Isaac, and I'm so glad that you got the chance to meet her because I've had such wonderful conversations, and I'm chewing on what are my 3 words now because I think they're different than when she and I work together. And I would love to hear from you what resonated, what questions came up, what became clear for you. If you want to send me what your 3 words are, I would love to hear it. You can do so by sending me an email at podcast@sarahnollwilson.com. Again, that's podcast@sarahnollwilson.com, where I read and respond to every email we receive. Now, if you want to support the show, you can do so in 2 ways. If you haven't yet, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platform. This helps us be able to continue this work, get great exposure, and to be able to bring on guests like Elsa. And if you're interested in supporting us in additional ways, you can become a patron. You can go to patreon.com/conversations on conversations, where your financial support goes to support the team that makes this show possible. You'll get early episodes that are ad-free, plus you'll get some pretty cool, unique swag that is only available through Patreon. A big thank you to the crew that makes this show possible, to our producer, Nick Wilson, our sound editor, Drew Knoll, our transcriptionist, Becky Reinert, our marketing consultant, Jessica Burge, and the rest of the Snowco crew. And a final thank you to Elsa for helping us lean into our power and reclaim it. So I'm so grateful that she was able to be on the show. All right, my friends, that concludes our episode of Conversations on Conversations. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, when we can change the conversations we have with ourselves and others, we can change the world. So till next time, please be sure to rest, rehydrate, and we'll see you again soon.